Welcome, welcome everyone. I'm so excited that you are here once more to enjoy another excellent presentation on living well. Before I start, I just want to state our disclaimer. I just want everyone to know that the purpose of living well is to share information and to educate our community. I just want you to know that the topics that we discuss here are for information purposes. If you have any concerns, I would prefer that you go to your doctors. If you need any care, treatment, that you go to your doctor and discuss and follow up with your doctor. So what we do here is to educate you and to give you knowledge about different topics. Today, we have Dr. Sinclair again to share her knowledge with us. She's not new to our platform. She has been here before. She's a renowned surgeon here in the Central Florida area, and she is going to discuss today a very important subject, a subject that's not talked much about, and that's domestic violence and how to stop it, how to recognize it. So without any further ado, we are going to go ahead and hear what Dr. Sinclair has to tell us today. Welcome, Dr. Sinclair, again to our platform. We're so excited that you're here. I'm so glad that you took your time out to come to share with us today. We're excited to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. As I was sharing before we officially started, I actually decided to wear purple today, and I had actually forgotten that I was supposed to be presenting. And then when Dr. Sankey called me, and then of course she reminded me but of course I have presentations, I had to make a few changes. But even at that time, it didn't dawn on me that I was wearing purple. And then when we were talking earlier with Sister Evelyn, she was like, "You're in purple." And for those of you who are not aware, October is actually two things. I know you've heard me speak on breast cancer, but it's also Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and the color for domestic violence is purple. I think it's a kind of ironic because, you know, when battered women or battered people, and you get that black and blue, that's exactly what it looks like. So they chose this color. So I'm actually wearing purple. Just a little background before we get into the presentation. I know many of us grew up and we hear about somebody, you know, whose husband was beating them. It's not that it's only men, but it's mostly men. And you know, you may say something or people don't really say anything. But when I came face to face with this issue was a few years ago. I was actually at Morehouse School of Medicine. I was teaching surgery and trauma. And a friend of mine, an Adventist nurse who worked in the ER, they were having a conference in Jamaica, East Jamaica Conference Women's Ministry. And she asked me to do something on domestic violence. At the same time, I had this patient come in, and she was a young lady, a little overweight, and the boyfriend was there, and he claimed that she got injured when the car was moving and she was with somebody and not him, and she tried to get out of the car. But the thing about it, her injuries were not consistent with that. And she just had this terrified look on her face. And turns out she had a ruptured spleen, which would not have happened if you'd fell out of a car. That was a direct, we found out later, he had karate kicked her. He was a small fellow, but he was a martial arts, and he actually had done a karate kick like a martial arts. I don't know if ever you've seen MMA fighting. And she almost died. And then I went to medical records, and I saw she had been in there several times before, broken arm, broken this, and I started researching it. And then Elsa asked me, and I did give a brief presentation. This was in 2001. And then in 2003, just before I came to Florida, they had a huge conference in Jamaica. And Dr. Harvard Williams spoke. And in the afternoon, we had these breakout rooms. And my room was domestic violence. And at first, I was just sitting there. And I was like, oh, I guess nobody's going to show up. Not only did they show up, the room was overflowing. And when it was time for us to go back into the main session, they finally had to come and get us and say, you have to close out now. There were so many. This is an Adventist Women's Conference, okay? Just to be clear, this is not a secular, this is an Adventist Women Conference, Adventist women from all over Jamaica and some other parts of the Caribbean. And it was so full, and people didn't want to leave. And afterwards, even others came up to me who were afraid to speak out openly to tell me what was happening with their husbands who were pastors and elders in the church and leaders in the church. So this is a real problem. A few years ago, a friend of mine from Trinidad told me of a mass shooting happened again in the Adventist church. This man killed the woman and children. This is the Adventist church. Okay, the Adventist church. And I cannot overemphasize that, because for so long, with so many of the issues that face us, we have turned our heads or come up with untenable solutions and allowed women and children to suffer. And many of us see or have seen situations where we know something is wrong and we haven't said anything because oh, it's a church, he's an elder, whatever. So this is a real problem, and it's occurring, unfortunately, even now in our churches and in our communities. It's happening to our neighbors, and unfortunately, maybe even happening into homes here. Oh, I hit this without hitting the share screen. Let's go share screen first. Bring this up. And then we're going to go to the slideshow. Okay, so domestic violence or interpersonal violence, that's the new name for it. It is much more common than we would think. And basically, it's when somebody who is close to you, someone who is supposed to be part of your family or part of your love group, is hurting you. That's what it is. It's a universal problem. One of the misconceptions that many people have is that it only occurs in low-income neighborhoods. While there may be more arrests in low-income neighborhoods, that's just because people are there to call police. But this is unfortunate reality. It happens universally, and it also happens in very wealthy and medium-income communities, except that it's more covered, not often seen. There's no racial difference. Again, a lot of time people assume that some of these things are happening more among Blacks or minority groups. It's not. It's just that, like many things in our society that are negative, it is often shown when it happens in our groups, but it's happening everywhere. So there's no ethnic, there's no social, it is a universal problem. 80% of the victims are women and children. That should say Anne. I don't know, I missed that. And 95% of the perpetrators are men. 1 in 3 females will be abused in some way in their life. We're talking about 1 in 3. And 1 in 5 males will be abused. And this is a collective abuse. It includes sexual abuse as well as physical abuse. There's a high recidivism rate, meaning that the perpetrators are unlikely to change. Now, I know everyone can change by the power of God, but part of the problem is because it is one of those crimes that is easily gotten away with and overlooked by our society, because the person is always such a nice guy, that there's a high recidivism rate because the rate of being caught and punished is so low. So there's a high recidivism rate. And this is, I remember when I discovered number 2 here, it was just blew my mind that there's an increased risk during pregnancy. You would think it'd be decreased, right? No, it's actually increased, because they figure that the woman at that time is a time when she can't go anywhere, she can't do anything. And there's an increased risk. One thing I learned when I started my residency at Howard was this. One of the worst days for domestic violence was Valentine's Day. Again, I was shocked, but I remember, when you're on call on Valentine's Day, you would see these women coming in hurt, beaten, whatever. And so whenever there's a holiday or something, there's a high risk. If the victim has a chronic illness, meaning that she's not able to, or he is not able to do a lot for themselves, there's a great deal of dependency. There's an increased risk. It increased during the pandemic because, of course, during the pandemic we were locked down, and the women didn't have anywhere to go, nowhere to escape, so they were there. And it also increased use when there's drug or alcohol abuse. This is also increased. It's a matter of control. One person trying to take total control of another, and then lack of control. The other person who at this time now has low self-esteem and is allowing the other person to basically control every aspect of their life. The abuser basically seeks to have total control. People always talk about looking for red flags, but it's actually the more subtle things that need to be looked for first, because by the time the red flags come, everybody can know that something is wrong. And it's always better to learn these things before. Isolation. And especially when you're dealing with young people, teenagers, if they're going out, dating, just gone off to college, you talk to them. Whenever you are with someone and they try to prevent you from socializing anymore with anybody else. Oh, you're my girlfriend now, and no, we can't go to the movies with other people like we used to, or go skating like we used to. It's just me and you. That is always a problem. One of the things you also notice is that you ask someone a question and the person answers for them. It's as if there's no, they're in total control. Dependence. Creating a situation where you have to be dependent on them for income, for whatever, for transportation, whatever it is, creating an environment where you're physically or dependent on the abuser in some way, because this is a way to ensure that you can fight back or tell. And one of the things that is always done is to try to let the victim feel like they're not worth anything. No one else is going to love you. I'm the only person who even cares for you, and you're not even that much. I'm just pitying you to care for you. So you have no self-worth. And the reason these things are important is because these are often the earlier signs. And this is the time to realize that something is wrong. Because when the severe violence starts, you're already isolated from your friends, you're already dependent, because you have either set up your account where your pay goes into that account and he has total control over it and you don't. And you no longer think that you're worthy, you think it's your fault. Well, if you didn't do this, if you didn't do that, that wouldn't happen to you. It becomes much more difficult for you to seek the attention that you need and to get the help that you need. So it's always important, not just for the victim, but as we look at especially our young people, those of you who have opportunity to observe them at church, or if you're in a college environment, that if you see certain things happening, that is the best time to step in before it becomes so ingrained even in the person that they no longer even have any self-worth. So one of the things we have to do is recognize the sign, the isolation. You can't go anywhere without the abuser. And like you can notice it even if the person is married. And let's say you're part of a family and you can't visit your own family unless he's there. You can't go anywhere. You can't have a doctor's, you can't do anything. This is on a separate subject, but I was doing a course on human trafficking because it's required now for physicians. And what the traffickers would normally do, they would go in the room with the young lady if they happen to come to the ER, and they pretend that they're somehow involved in them. One of them went in the room and claimed that he was her pastor. And a nurse, a very astute nurse, noticed that he was holding the Bible wrong way and upside down. and they insisted that he had to leave. Because when you're in a situation where you have dominance over somebody else, you don't want them to be in a position where they can actually tell someone else what's happening. So if you have a family member or a friend or something, and all of a sudden now they can't go to potlucks, they can't go to any church picnic, anything that they normally would do. And if you're around young people, this is something that you need to look for, because we can't expect them to know. So we as adults need to look and notice if what is happening to our young people. And then there's emotional abuse, where someone is supposed to be, again, dating or husband or wife, or whatever, and they're always putting down the other person as if, I'm just making a joke. No, that's not a joke. A joke is a rabbi, a priest, and a Baptist minister goes into a restaurant order. That's a joke, right? When someone says something mean and unkind and says, I'm just joking, it's not a joke. And if you notice that this person keeps doing that to somebody else, it is something for us to notice and to find a way to get to that young person and try to figure out what's going on, because both of them need help, but especially the victim. Now, dependence. This, especially once the relationship becomes more solidified, like in a husband and wife relationship, either one, they make it difficult so the person can't work anymore. I know of one case where he actually was coming to work, and should go in the stairwell, just so people wouldn't hear him, but people did. Or because of the abuse, the person keeps missing work till the point where they get fired. So of course now they're unable to do anything because they can't work, and now they're totally financially dependent. Or a situation where someone is forced to have their check direct deposit into his account and they have no access to it. So they have to always ask for money. Okay. I came across this article as I was reviewing my presentation. And why don't you leave? And this is very important to me. I remember when I started doing research on it, because there are actually several articles, Journal of Medicine, and that's when I realized how pervasive this was. One was a nurse. She was a white lady, and she had been abused by this man for years. She was even like the nurse manager for the ER. She was abused, and then she was diagnosed with cancer, and it got even worse. And I remember discussing it with a colleague of mine who was normally very, very nice Christian man. And he says, I don't have any patience for them because they should just leave. And that's what another colleague of mine said. This is when I was actually discussing this, the first case I told you about. And I told him I'd started doing some research. And it surprised me that he said that. But then I thought about myself and so many others, and I realized that it is a mindset that we who are not in this situation have all the time. Why don't they just leave? Well, there are a lot of reasons why they don't just leave. One, they're afraid that you could become more violent or kill them. And it actually does show that if you leave without a plan, you're much more likely to be killed. So if you just up and leave and say, oh, I'm just going to leave, you're much more likely to be killed than you have to have a plan, because that fear is real. That fear is real. And this other one is so unfortunate, believing that abusive relations is a mixture of good times, as long as, along with abuse, oh, he's pretty good to me. He does this, he does that. And, always looking for the good things, because they've come to a point where they just kind of have been totally, I don't want to say brainwashed, but they have been totally accepted the fact now that this is a normal way of life. And it's not that bad. And of course, there's fear of losing custody, especially when you are financially, you don't have anything. The fear of losing custody, or that they may have to share the custody with children, and that when the abuser has the children, they would harm them. And this is a real fear. We have seen cases like this in the news, where the father gets the children one weekend, and when she goes to pick them up, he kills everybody, or he disappears with the children. So it's not an unreal fear. So they can't just leave. They should leave, but they can't just leave. There are steps, there are organizations that are necessary to help them to leave. What we can do as a church is that once we recognize that these things are happening, we definitely need to be able to reach out to try to help these people. The bathrooms is an excellent way, because they may be able to wait outside, they may even take their phones, but if you're in the bathroom and you have a phone and that person has a phone and you can talk to them, they can actually reach out at that time to an organization. In fact, that's how some of the times they have been able to save young women and men from sex trafficking, because they went to use the bathroom somewhere and somebody noticed that it wasn't right, and they offered them, and they were able to get the phone, call the authorities, and they were able to get these people out. And this is one of the ways in which we can help. We have to be aware of what might be happening, not just dismiss it, not just say, how come she always have these bruises on her? But we have to notice this, and then we can't have one of the things, I think I may have it here. Let's talk about the bruises first, and before we go into what we're going to help. Clumsy. This person is so clumsy. I've known clumsy people in my life. I have a couple of bumps on my leg where I hit it on a car door, and I can tell you there are two of them, okay, because I can tell you when they happen. You can't be so clumsy that every week you're a grown person, and every week you're so clumsy that you're getting hit in your eye, you're getting hit on you're breaking your arm, all of these things. No, it doesn't make any sense. And so we, as the Church of God, the body of Christ, we need to see this and know that nobody is that clumsy, and something is wrong. Unexplainable bruises, okay? Multiple different visits to different ER. One of the things with children are doing well in school, all of a sudden their grades drop, okay? The person keeps, I can't go to work today because of such and such. So if you know somebody you're working with, and every minute they're calling out because of this or that, those are some of the things that we need to know. So whether it's in our environment or in the church environment, those are some of the things we need to look for. And here's the part. What can we do? First of all, we have to be aware. We have to realize that this is a real problem. Okay, it's not just a married folk. Oh, they're married. It's not, no, it is our business. Okay, we are our brother's keeper. So we have to be aware. We have to be able to ask questions discreetly. And here it is. I knew I had it in somewhere. Do not confront the abuser. Because let me tell you what has happened, especially in a church situation. Somebody or some elder finds out that somebody else is doing it, and they'll, oh, what kind of thing? That's foolish. He should not be doing that. And they think that they're going to come and confront. No, you're putting the person being abused, whether it's wife, children, or however it is, you're putting them in danger. This is something that needs professional help, both from the authorities such as the police, as well as professional organizations. And I'm sorry, I should have put like the 800 numbers, but they're easily found by us, where you can look those up, the hotlines for abuse. You do not confront the abuser. This person has a level of psychosis, okay? When you can look at the wife that you said that you love, or your children, and you can hurt them so badly, don't think that because you might be a church elder or whatever, that you're going to confront and all of a sudden they're going to be fine. No, that is a very dangerous thing that you're doing for the victims. So you don't confront the abuser, you get professional help. And sometimes you need to get professional help, work with the organization, and help them get a plan. Because like I said, that slide we talk about fear, the statistics actually show that if you just leave, the chances that you're going to be shot or killed is actually high. So you can't just leave. This is serious. This is something that has to be planned. And in order to help the family or those who are being abused. So what is the church's response? Unfortunately, for so many years, the church's response was nothing. Because, oh, we're going to pray about this, sis, and don't, no, you can't leave your husband unless blah, 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 blah. No, that is incorrect response. I was on a platform and they had someone from the union who was talking about what do you do if, so they're talking about abuse and inappropriate behavior and so on. So I posed a question. I said to the person from the union, right? I said, if you have credible knowledge that something is wrong, what do you do? Who do you contact? This was his answer. If you bring an accusation, they're going to look in your phone. So you have to make sure that what you have on your phone, because they're going to check your phone and they're going to check this. This was his response. This was on a national platform. This was a person in risk management at the union. All I said was, because the thing that gets me all the time, people say, oh, we have a zero tolerance policy. So that's when I followed up with this question. You say you have a zero tolerance policy. What if I have credible evidence of inappropriate behavior? What do you do? And part of this response was you're supposed to tell the pastor. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. What if he's the one with inappropriate behavior? There is no system. There is no system at the conference level where you can report, we're talking about inappropriate behavior, let alone abuse. There's none, which I think is unfortunate because that is foolishness. You can't say you have a zero tolerance if there's no system to deal with the problem. Like if you talk to the church today, the North American church, they say they have a zero tolerance for racism, but we all know that racism is rampant in our church as well as in all of our institutions, schools, hospitals, everywhere. Why? Because there is no policy and there's no procedure where we can actually deal with issues. So as far as I'm concerned, the church really doesn't have a response. So what is your response? Your response as a Christian is that your sister, brother, children are hurting, so you should do the right thing. The right thing is to find out agencies that can help the person. If you are in a situation where you have trustworthy ministers and social workers in your churches, which many of our churches do, because many of us as Adventists are in that system, then you have persons who you can go to. There are national and state hotlines that can help the person. But what you cannot do is make judgments against a person or think that you're going to go in to solve the situation, because this is a huge, complex problem. So our response would be to seek through prayer for God to help us to do the things that we can do to help, finding the proper authorities, getting involved in such a way as to not further put the person in danger, person or persons in danger. And then we're praying for both of them, but we need to find a way to get the ones who are being abused to safety. I have pictures here of these people. Some of you may know who Nicole Mullen is. She's the one who sang "I Know My Redeemer Lives." It was a very popular song. And who made the sun to shine in the morning? Who made the moon? You can read what it says on the screen. Her first marriage, she endured physical and mental abuse. In 1993, she married and divorced in 2004. In the Facebook, she cited biblical reasons for divorce. And I stop here for a second because I don't know of any case of spousal abuse in which the other spouse is not unfaithful. They always said, the church used to say, well, they have to be unfaithful in order for you to get divorced, but you can be separated and all that kind of stuff, which don't make no sense at all. But in any case, we were dealing with it in Sabbath school or something one time, and I was talking to somebody who I respected, and I kept trying to make that point, and they kept trying to say, well, you know, you don't have to get divorced, but you can separate and so on. The fact of the matter is, I don't know. I'm not saying there's none, but I have taken care of more than I would like. People have been abused. I've known way too many people who have been abused. And I've never known a case where the abuser was faithful to his wife or husband. They were mostly men who were the abusers, though. I don't know any. They're always unfaithful because that's why they're treating you like you're trash, because they have something else on the side. And many of them are serial adulterers. So she did say she got divorced for biblical reasons, which means that she eventually found out that he was having an affair. But look at it. This is what, 11 years? 11 years. And this is a superstar singer, gospel music. There are other examples, but the examples I'm showing you here are all Christian women, because they were all abused by Christian men. A lot of you know Joyce Meyer. I've listened to her. She actually has a book and a series called Life Beyond Abuse. Again, another Christian woman. She now has her own ministry. But yes, at one point in time, she was a victim of abuse. This stuff is not being made up. It's not being exaggerated. It is real. We're talking about 1 in 3. Of course, you know Yolanda Adams. Very popular singer, beautiful young lady. 3 years, spousal abuse, the reason for her divorce. Dr. Juanita Bynum, she was one of the biggest speakers on the women's ministry circuit, you know, and in the parking lot, her husband, Reverend, beat her in the parking lot. In the parking lot. They were at a conference in the parking lot. Those of you who watch a Tina Turner story know, you know, because after they become so empowered, after a while, so that even somebody like her, so can you imagine if somebody like her, who is well known, and yet still the man felt that he could do this, let alone some lady in church. And this is one here. Do we know who this is? I grew up watching this lady. My daughter is a senior now at Oakwood, but we grew up watching Kids Time. This is an Adventist lady, okay? Kids Time. She was a nurse. She was being beaten to a pulp, threatened her very life. Okay? This is our Brenda Walsh. She has helped many of our children grow up. Kids Times, Kids Praise. Of course, she's not in there anymore, but yeah, Batter to Bless. That's the name of her book. This is real, folk. This is not made up. This is not isolated. This is real. Real women in our church, real children are hurting. We cannot ignore it. We need to find ways to identify it and then to be of proper help. And I know some of the men will always say, oh, they just need a good talking to. No, don't do that. That's dangerous. This is something that needs professional help, but we must be aware because we are called to be our brothers and our sisters' keeper. And it is always unfortunate when these things come out in the news rather than our church being able to intervene and being able to be a blessing. There's a comment or question in the chat, but I wanted to, the abuse hotline. Thank you, Ms. Emlyn. 800-799-7233. Thank you for putting that up there. That's something that I should have done. And I'll take any questions now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sinclair, for, for bringing this problem that we need to really be aware of. As you know, I was researching the topic too, and I saw where I think it was every 9 seconds, a woman in the United States, or, you know, I think every 9 seconds is abused. Every 9 seconds. That just blew me away. Every 9 seconds. So it's so very important for us to be that, as you said, our brother's keeper. And I was reading a story where I think it was in Kentucky, a young lady, she was kidnapped, and she was doing the universal sign. I did not know that there was a universal sign for abuse, or, bringing attention that I need help. And she was doing the universal sign. Someone saw her and was, alerting the police, and they were able to intercept that kidnapper. And because that young lady was on the news, she was missing, and I guess he was about to take out a tongue, and she was doing the abuse sign. And by someone being alert and astute of what was going on, saved that young lady's life. So I don't know if any of you know about this sign, but I learned it, and I just want to show everyone. If you see anyone, or if you in a situation where you are being abused or kidnapped or anything like that, the sign for abuse is you open the palm of your hand, you cross your thumb, and you close it as a fist. You do that several times. Someone might recognize this sign and call police for help. So let us, keep our eyes open and just look around and always be aware of a situation and what's happening around us, so we can help others who are in problem.
A couple of years ago, happened right here in Florida, in Leesburg. I always say white people are too nosy, but I was so happy, not like a good nosy white woman. Anyway, she saw this young lady in braids, and it looked like she was being forced into a van. And she called the police, went to the police, and she was able to do a drawing. You saw her. It was a young Black girl. Turns out, even though it was here, I think in Leesburg or something, I live in Central Florida, they had nabbed this young lady in Miami.
Mm-mm-mm.
Let me tell you, all we have to do is open our eyes and look. Open our eyes and look. One of the things that I will do when I'm seeing patients is that sometimes they're insisting that they be in the room. And I will just say, I'm sorry, you need to leave the room. And they said, whatever, as long as the person is grown. And I see occasionally I see children and adolescents, but most of my patients are older. So, I mean, I will put parents out, or whoever it is, out in a heartbeat. I will put them out. And that's something that ER docs especially are trained to do. And like I said, now we have to do a course in sex trafficking. But that's one of the things we do. And I don't ask them a question like, would you like to stay? I said, I actually need you to leave the room right now. I don't care if they protest or whatever, but I put it to them that way, as a very matter-of-factly, so that you can get the person out of the room and you can speak to the person clearly. And many of us at Adventist, we're in some form of the healthcare field. So as nurses, for myself as a physician, nurses probably even more, because you guys have much more interaction with people than the doctor does. And you're much more likely to see something than I am or any other physician is. But if you think something isn't right, you're probably right. You're probably right. So they can't be at the hospital 24/7. So you definitely can find a way to try to find out what's going on. And like I said, I know there's this self-righteous thing where I'm going to talk to him, or what happens, especially sometimes in a church setting, somebody finds out that, okay, like this young man is abusive to the young woman. So we're just going to march over there because, we're in the church a long time. No. First, you need to separate her. You need to get a clear idea what's going on. And then you intervene in a way in which it will benefit and protect her, and not put her in any more danger. And also, there's even though the recidivism rate is high, it doesn't mean it's impossible. I have to believe that the blood of Christ can save him too. or the abuser too. So therefore, if we have a situation such as that, then we should definitely be looking for ways in which we can help this person realize that that is not the way to go. And we need to, like I said, it has to be a plan, because almost invariably, at least for some time, you're going to have to separate and protect the person who's being abused.
Yeah. And not also, also I was just thinking, also the elderly, because sometimes,
Oh, yes. I didn't touch on that. Go ahead, Sister Evelyn.
I was just saying that sometimes, because of you brought out the point that because these people cannot help themselves because, physically, some kind of illness or something like that, a lot of time I find the elderly, they are being abused. Sometimes not physically, but not giving them food or even accommodation. So many different ways I have found elderly people that are being abused by someone who should be caring for them. So we also have to look out for that too. Not only
Especially here in
husband and wife,
Florida,
yes, yes,
a lot of people come down to retire, and then they become more and more dependent because they start losing their function. And it's not only with that too, we have to be careful and pay attention to them, that people are not stealing the little that they have in the name of trying to help them. Again, we're a community, a Christian community, a community of believers, and that's part of what we do need to do, because elder abuse also happens for many reasons. One, they, as I said, you point out, Sister Emlyn, dependence. When someone, what's the saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when someone has absolute power over somebody else, the chances of them doing the wrong thing is high. Okay, the chances of them doing the wrong thing is high. And so we need to look at our elderly, if we have elderly church members, etc. I mean, some of the things that we can do is to try to help families with elderly people, because sometimes with the elder abuse is not quite the same as with the other abuse. Sometimes it is stemming from out of just being tired and frustrated that now you have to take care of this person and they can't, you have to be cleaning them up and so on. It's one thing when you clean up your little baby, it's another thing to have to be clean up adults and so on. So sometimes it comes, I'm not excusing it, but sometimes it comes out of frustration. So there's a double way in which we can help. One, in terms of helping the person who is caring for the elderly, and two, in terms of counseling and seeing that, because if the person is resorting to abuse, that is not an excuse, and we should be again taking care of those who have cared for so many their entire lives.
yep. Okay, this is time for questions. Anyone?
Questions or comments?
Okay. Okay, I think you did a good job, Dr. Sinclair, explaining about domestic violence and the different signs that we need to look out for and ways that we can help. So let us remember, do not go approach the abuser. It just makes things worse. Find resources that you can maybe give to that person so that they can look for help. And it's much better than trying to intervene yourself, because it's a skill. You have to know
Yeah.
how to approach that person, because things can really get violent, because that person knowing that now somebody else knows what's going on,
Oh yeah.
they're not happy.
The secrecy is their protector.
Right. Yes, they are not happy. So it's just going to make it worse for the person who you think you're trying to help. So let us be aware and be our brother's keeper, and look, as we go out doing our daily chores and, to our different jobs, and even going to the grocery store or your neighbor next door, just keep an eye out. So because that person could be screaming for help. I know it's, sometimes they will say, I wish, I was trying to tell you, I gave you so many different signs, but you never picked up on it.
Right.
That the abuser sometimes, will try to tell us, but we are not astute enough to realize that they're trying to tell us something. So let's pay more attention. and be attentive to our friends, families, because you never know what's going on in someone's home. It's really sad, because I believe we are all God's children, and God loves and cares for us. And I know this is not something that He wants us to be going through,
No.
to be hurting like this. I cannot imagine living in a home where you are not happy. Your home should be a palace. Your home should be where joy and love and everything like that is experienced. And then not to have that is very stressful. And another thing, this kind of stress brings on lots of illness.
Yes, yes.
So, you see someone always sick, who knows? It could be stemming from what's happening at home. So again,
Especially if they can't give you a reason. Oh, you're at the doctor. So what happened? Well, they can't find out what's going on and so on. I mean, we're not perfect, but trust me, there are very few times somebody's going to be sick and we can't figure out what's going on.
okay.
So
Mhm. Right.
Lee
Okay,
Turnbull has
Lee.
raised their hand.
Yes, Dr. Sinclair, thank you very much. I forgot my voice is not good.
That's okay.
So, thanks. So also older people, I know of an 82-year-old male and his 82-year-old wife, and he beat her up, and he had a weapon in the house also. So just so that meaning just about anything could happen to anybody.
Mhm.
So she was able to call the police, and they were able to come and take away his weapon. So that was good. But he's now moved across the street, the correct distance that they told him he have to stay. So she have to see him every once in a while. But just the same that happens to older people as well, by older people as well.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And something else too, when you mentioned older people, remember that there are times when they start to have dementia and memory loss. And part of the problem when they start developing these things is that your character tends to, it's kind of like alcohol. Some people are drunk and they're kind of happy, and other people are drunk and they're just mean. The fact of the matter is the hidden traits come out. So if you were just a mean person and just unkind person, and then now that this dementia, which gives some paranoia setting in, you could become, even because before the dementia, you had a certain amount of control in terms of your behavior, but as you're getting older and you start having problems and so on, it's less likely that you can control it. So yes, you can actually end up someone who wasn't necessarily a physical abuser, and that's why we look at some of the earlier signs, because there are people who are not physical abusers, but the husband controlled everything. The husband controlled everything. And now as you're getting older, woe be unto the wife if she's need a care, because he certainly is not going to be caring for her.
Yeah.
So that is something that we need to look at, especially, like I said, I'm here in Central Florida. We do have a lot of retirees, and you have to pay attention to see why how come she didn't come to church with you today? You just ask questions, and you can ask it so on. And if there's a hesitance, they say, okay, we're going to come over and help. No, I don't want anybody coming to the house. And that they're older, then something probably does need to be done. You probably do need to go, or if there are children, you need to try and find the children and let them know that something is going on. Because a situation I encountered some time ago is, people come here and they get older, they lose their wife, they lose their husband, and now they marry this person that they really don't know, right? Because it's not like the first wife or first husband that they knew. A lot of the, especially the older people, they grew up in the same community or whatever. So now they marry someone and they really don't know this person. And this person is not, of course, when they were in their community together, it's not that. But the minute the person gets sick, you see what happened. And I had a case where the lady needed surgery and he was refusing to give like his insurance information, stuff like that. Her son was trying to do his best to get his mother taken care of. And he was just horrible. She did die. And then all of a sudden he was so nice because he wanted us to fill out paperwork because she did have a cancer, wanted us to fill out paperwork. But while she was still alive and her son brought her to see us, he was very, I mean, we finally got, like we went on the hospital and got some information because like we couldn't bill insurance without him. And he was very obstructive. But once she died and he wanted to get whatever death benefit it was as well. So here it is now, this is not his son, obviously it's her son. But now he was basically abusing her. He wasn't physically hitting her, but he was abusing her by refusing care for her and preventing her son from giving her care. Because again, they come to Florida, their lifetime spouse dies and they meet this person. They really don't know. It's almost like young people. They really don't know this person. They don't know that person. And I've seen that also. I've seen several cases like that with these older couples where there is some form of abuse going on. And I see Alicia said, can you please give some light on emotional and financial abuse? These are some of the things that it starts out with. Emotional abuse, always it's little things. It doesn't start out big, with the big verbal abuse, you're nothing, you're blah, blah, blah. It doesn't start out like that. It starts out usually with little put downs, always criticizing the person, even especially when the person has done something well. And you start to criticize, try to find fault with what they have done. Try to find fault with their presentation at church or whatever it is, because you're always trying to find ways to put them down, to say that what they did was not that big and you could do better and so on. So that's where the emotional stuff starts, the little put downs. Like I said, saying some things that are unkind and then say you're just joking. And just constantly, the constant criticism, the constant putting them down, the constant finding fault with everything, even when something is nothing to found fault with. I remember when we just started Hope at Home, when the pandemic had just started, and Dr. Oliver made a statement. It just floored me. I think I was making breakfast because nobody was going to church. It was a very few weeks. He says, there's no such thing as constructive criticism. I was like, what? I know, let me just let you know, I know Willie. We graduated together from Westerners College. We graduated together from Andrews University. Okay. He's a few years ahead of me. I went to Westerners College, and then so I only spent 2 years there, graduated, went to Andrews, and then he went to the seminary. So we have known each other since I was a teenager. He was a teenager, I've known him. And I've known Elaine, even before they got married, I know them. And I've known them for a long time. They're great people, mind-wise, just good people. When he said that, I was like, what are you talking about, Willie? And he explained, and he is absolutely right. There's no such thing as constructive criticism. To criticize means that you are putting down someone. If if you're a teacher and somebody doesn't do something right, or even if you're not a teacher, parent or something, if someone isn't doing something correctly, then you say, this is not the way, and you correct them. But to criticize, the word criticize, meaning you are making them feel less than. So we hide that, it's just constructive, there's no such thing. So when everything you do, even the simplest things that you do, someone starts finding fault, that's where the emotional abuse, because then you start thinking, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm not doing it right, whatever. And the financial abuse is what traps a lot of women. And that is the irony. Sometimes the woman is the one who is actually making the larger income, but they have convinced you that, like, you should have a joint account, and your paycheck, your whole paycheck is going into this account. And then at the end of the day, you don't have the ATM card, or even if you do have the card, every time you make a withdrawal, he knows you have no account on your own. So basically he can control your entire finances. I mean, I've talked to people, I've talked to marriage counselor, and they said it is okay for you as a woman to have an account of your own. You should always have a joint account for the household. But anytime someone wants to put you in a position where they are controlling your finances, there's no good that will ever come out of that. There's no good that will ever, especially because it's always come from there. Nobody volunteers to say, here's all my money and you control it. So they're the ones, it's always them saying, you know, oh, we should have this account and this should go in there. No, you can have an account that's joint, but you should always have something for yourself. You should always have something for yourself. And there's no way that your check alone should be going into that account. Because once someone controls your finances, you know, what are you going to do? How are you going to take care of yourself? How are you going to take care of your children? How are you going to pay your bills if that person controls the account and you have no control over it? So, you know, those are the things that you need to look at, especially early in relationships. Whenever someone wants to control your spending, control what you do, that's always problematic. That's always problematic.
Yep.
That is so true. So Dr. Sinclair, thanks for your words of wisdom. And as we go through the week, go through our lives, let us be astute and be aware of our surroundings and other people who might be seeking our help, so that we can be our brother's keeper. That's what we are, our brother's keeper. Thanks again, Dr. Sinclair. And I want to thank our audience for coming. At this time, I'm going to stop recording, and we all